What's up, y'all? It's your boy, Hilliard Guest, and you guys are listening to the Screenwriters Rant Room, where we keep it real, we keep it opinionated, we keep it what, everybody?
Game all day.
Yeah. On this show, we discuss entertainment, TV, film, music, culture, but our focus is always screenwriting, stories, craft, and shit like that. Yeah, like that, like bars. Y'all don't even know. They'd rather get rapped like that. Like y'all jealous. All right. So if you guys are grown, we're gonna jump on in. So today we got my man co-hosting with me today. My man in the building, writer, director, producer himself, Gregg Simon. What's up, Greg?
How you doing, Hilliard?
Welcome to
Good
the Terror
to be
Dome.
here. Thank you very much.
Exactly. I've been telling him for a while. I'm gonna throw him on the mic. He's like, uh-oh. Here we go.
Game on. All day.
Exactly. All day. So what you been up to? It's been a minute since I've seen you.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting times. I've actually been super busy considering the constriction going on right now in the industry.
Yeah.
Working on a couple of movies. I got one that's a neo-noir crime thriller that we're in the middle of casting right now, called Patience of Vultures.
All right.
And that's going to be going into production.
I'm starting that. I
spring.
didn't tell you I'm starting that. Just go ahead.
That's true. Yeah, but your agent's tough.
Yeah, I know. Call Jerry. Hold on.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, no, it's you know, it harks back to early Coen Brothers, Blood Simple meets maybe early Nolan, Memento, neo-noir crime, really fun script. Mandalay Pictures is producing, and so look out for that hopefully about a year's time.
Daniel said he's jealous now. Look at that.
Jealous? No. You acted it too? Oh yeah. Okay. All right, we can erase something. We'll talk after. Yeah. Taco Bell. Yeah. Good enough.
That's dope.
And I'm working on a western now. Really fun western. Very spaghetti western inspired, revenge-o-matic, called Cold Shot. And,
I like it.
Yeah, we're going to be going out with that soon.
All right.
Yeah.
Look at you. Yeah. Wait. Where my 10%? Where my pet fees at? You know what I mean? That's dope, man. I like that. That's cute.
Yeah.
That's cute.
And then TV's kicking up for next year, so starting to take some meetings now too for episodic and possibly some producing, directing jobs next year.
All right.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah.
You just blowing up.
You know, just
It's all Stephanie, isn't it? It's all Stephanie.
100%.
That's his girlfriend over there, looking all cute and stuff. That's interesting. I've been doing a new thing, and you can tell me about. You can jump in. We're gonna get you. But this is just us warming up, just having a conversation. So I've been doing a new thing. This is interesting, Michael, and everybody else. So I've been talking to a lot of my friends for years, and I've watched, and you probably have seen a lot of your friends do this too, where you get to a point and you realize you know half the industry, and you don't really utilize them the way you could. So I was like, and I've been telling Minquel and Rich and a bunch of people for years, I don't know why I won't do it, but I will always hesitate on going, yo, Malcolm Spellman, yo, Ben Watkins, like all these people that I know, hey, I got this project, this person came in and pitched, it'd be perfect for your company. So I finally decided to start doing that, just like 2 months ago. And I got 3 projects that I love and 1 film that I think could go to the Oscars. It's that good. And so I'm going out next week with one of them, you know, to some big companies that I'm like specifically going to. I don't have to, I can skip all the middleman. I go right to the person, you know what I mean? So I'm super excited about this new, you know, change that I'm doing to see if I can make that work out. So I've watched, you know, my friends Lena Waithe and everybody else do it. And I'm like, okay, if they can do it, I know I can do this, right? So this is my new, you know, turn that I'm doing.
Making me want to read some of that material.
No, you don't get it. Actually, there is one, I think.
FOMO.
Yeah, we'll talk. Anyway, so thank you guys. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with me. So let's jump on into the show. So today, we got my man in the building. We just met today, but I feel like I've known you just watching your little videos and stuff. He on there, you know, twerking and stuff. No, I'm kidding. But I've been watching, you know, some of the videos where you're talking about, you know, some of your other past projects and stuff. So, and then, you know, Michael Duncan, you know, referred us to you and stuff like that. We got my girl Krista in the building representing. What was the company called?
Aloft PR.
Aloft.
Yes.
Aloft or Aloft?
Aloft.
Aloft PR?
Yeah.
Aloft PR. Thank you, Krista, for coming in. Appreciate you guys. So they referred me to you. I got to interview Andy Parker for the Writers Guild podcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that episode dropped on Friday. literally, like boom.
Wow. Okay.
But you know, there are rules and stuff with these and Netflix and stuff.
Spoiled. No spoilers.
Exactly. So we got my man in the building, everybody. Daniel Pearle, writer, producer, co-showrunner. What are you? I forgot.
Not on this show. Executive producer.
Executive producer of the new series coming out, starring Claire Danes and Michael. How do you say it? Reeves?
Matthew.
Where did I get Mike? Because of you. Matthew Reeves. Shut up. Matthew Reeves, y'all, on Netflix called, why am I forgetting what's it called?
The Beast in Me.
I'm tripping. I got 3 hours.
Take 2. Let's go back. Take 2.
Take 2.
Just like that.
I like it like this. We keep it raw. Called The Beast in Me. We got my man, Daniel Pearle. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. So let's go back and tell everybody, you know, where you're from, where you grew up, and stuff, and how you got into the game.
Yeah, I was born in New York, but my parents moved to LA when I was 2.5. So for all intents and purposes, I grew up here in LA. My parents weren't in the industry. My dad was a therapist. My mom was mostly not working when she had kids, and later taught human development, like sex ed, nutrition, at a high school in Los Angeles. And then I had sort of probably vague aspirations of writing and something in the arts that I was very, sort of wishy-washy on. Did a little high school theater, did music stuff, and
Can you sing?
I was really good before my voice changed. I was an excellent singer, and my voice dropped really late, so it was very discouraging. It was like 16 years old, and all of a sudden, and it was never the same. but I did some of that, and then I think it was halfway through college, I took a playwriting workshop, and just found that dialogue was a lot more fun to write than I think with prose, because I had tried my hand at fiction and creative nonfiction, and I was always just very precious with something about the idea of this is my voice, this is me talking was always a little bit intimidating, and so somehow writing dialogue was just easier. It was more fun. It was just probably more cowardly because you're hiding behind other people, and it also didn't have to be pretty because it's just how people fumble through their speech, and it was also more musical. So that I kind of got the bug, and then but again didn't do any.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Do you think it helped that you had been on the stage as an actor?
I mean, that's probably giving me more credit. I mean, I did like a couple high school plays that I was very bad in. So I don't know. I was Winthrop in The Music Man when I was in 8th grade with the little kid with the lisp, and I was Lysander in Midsummer Night's Dream my senior year.
Okay.
It was not very good, but yeah, I mean, certainly it's. I do think there's a lot of overlap between writing and acting. I wish I could act. It seems much more fun than writing.
You perform the dialogue maybe while you're writing to test the dialogue.
I think you do. Yeah, I mean I think you definitely sound like a crazy person at your desk because you're sort of mumbling and gesticulating and saying things out loud. And so yeah, you're always acting it in your head or even out loud, for sure. I mean they do it better. But yeah, I think you do kind of have to feel your way through it and make sure it feels right to say. So no, I think certainly that informed it to an extent. And I was always a fan of film, TV, and plays. But even in college, I didn't do any theater in college. I didn't let anyone read anything. I applied to write like a creative thesis for the English major, mostly because I didn't want to write a real thesis. So I wrote I guess what you could say is my first play. It was really not very good, but it was a play and I finished college, moved to New York, not knowing really what I was doing. I was waiting tables and sort of had, again, vague aspirations and a lot of panic attacks. And I weirdly, I mean, again, because I've always been pretty, relatively shy and not so good at reaching out to strangers, but there was a playwright named Christopher Shin, who I had seen his play Dying City in New York. I think it was my junior of college, and been really blown away. There was just something about his writing that really, really moved me, and I'd subsequently gone on to read, all his other plays, and I had a collection of his plays and saw that he was on the faculty at the New School for Drama, which did an MFA program in theater, and Yeah, I think it was just late in the middle of one of those, panic attacks, and then I, not knowing what I was doing, like, I want to be a writer, what does that even mean? And so I sort of cold emailed him to the email address of his website, and just told him I was a fan,
Stalking, just so y'all clear.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know that he turns out to be just quite a generous person, so we actually, wrote back, and I was basically asking, his thoughts on MFAs in general, because I'd heard they have kind of a mixed bag. I had one fiction writing teacher who was sort of very anti-MFA and sort of thought unless you can get a free ride, it's it's a scam. Just you don't need to be taught to write. You just go and do it, have experiences. And she was a fiction writer. I do think there's something to be said because theater is collaborative. That actually getting to work with actors and be in a rehearsal room, that was stuff I'd never done. So I had breakfast with Chris very generously. Met me for breakfast and we talked and he sort of said, with MFAs, it's a great thing to sort of spend 2 or 3 years devoted just to your craft. If you can make it work financially, depending on loans, scholarships, part-time work. He's like, I don't know your situation. I was lucky in that I had a lot of scholarship for undergrad, so I didn't come out of undergrad with a lot of loans. So I thought, okay, I can take on some loans. At least I'm not doubling, my loans. So he basically said, yeah, it's not a degree that it's not a law degree, it's not a medical degree, it's not a degree that guarantees you income or work. So it is a risk, but the value of the program of like that is really what you put in and what you get out of it. So I just
networking opportunity too.
Yes, that for sure. I think certainly meeting. It depends. The New School for Drama, where I applied to that one program basically because he taught there, not knowing what to expect because I didn't have much experience. I had this one thing I'd written as sort of a sample, but I didn't bother applying to Yale or Juilliard or the fancy NYU, the fancy ones. I just thought, look, I'm not, I just applied to this one program because Chris taught there and got in, which was amazing, and sort of went in knowing, okay, if this doesn't, if I go for a year and feels like it's not working, I can always bail on it. I was a little bit 1 foot in, at 1 foot out, just because again I was just it's very hard I think when you're 24 years old to say I'm gonna be a writer. It feels sort of semi-delusional.
Right.
But you were laser focused on that one particular program.
Mostly, honestly, I admire him so much, and thought if he teaches here, and it was also I moved to New York. I thought, okay, I'm already here. I wouldn't be uprooting myself. So it was really just that one program, and also because the whole thing felt like a little bit of a whim or a lark. I didn't know what I was doing. Really, it was kind of. So I threw an application and went, and it was a really formative experience. He was amazing. I had some other really great teachers, and there were only 5 writers in my class.
You did really get some attention.
Yeah, so it's sort of this conservatory model. You're just, and I think I actually benefited from not really considering myself like a formed playwright with a voice, because you're doing all these sort of craft exercises and they kind of break you down, and so I sort of went in with an open mind, and it's funny because one thing Chris had said to me, I think when we first had breakfast, is and it's funny, we're still close friends now, and he doesn't remember this, but he said one thing is I will say is that some of my students I think don't work quite hard enough. In that he's like, I understand, you're young, you want to be a community, you want to have fun, you want to socialize. He's like, but it's, the value of the program is only what you learn and what you produce while you're in these 3 years, and it's such a, I think you don't quite realize until later in your life what a luxury it is to just have this time strictly devoted to your craft. So I think that was kind of in my head a little bit. I was like, all right, I'm gonna make the most of this. So my first year, there were, I started a play in his class that he was, very supportive of, and he just ended up being a real pivotal, mentor, teacher. I think you sort of need that one person to kind of, validate you enough that you don't feel totally insane.
Sure.
And he also was very generous with his time. That I think that my first summer after my first year of grad school, I think I sent him probably like 10 different drafts, and he just kept
reading.
I think he believed in the play. And
are you doing short plays? You doing full on?
This was a full length. I mean,
Okay.
the first year it was a lot of short plays,
Okay.
but then in
One
his
act plays.
one act plays. But then in his, but that was a full length. I think largely because strategically, and this was something that I was aware of, is that short plays are great and they're a great way to learn and they're fun to put on. As far as having a sample for an agent or you kind of need a full length, and that's what people really, if they want a sample, that's what they want to see. And so I worked on that play, and then and sort of kept it, and I learned a lot just from it was we were working with actors and directors and I just kind of threw myself into it and really enjoyed it and was.
So it's like workshopping the project.
Yeah, they kind of you had some classes. We had some classes that were just writing workshops. Right. It was just the 5 writers, and we would read each other's work. We had one class that was with the directors and actors in our cohort,
okay.
And in that class you would actually rehearse those things and put them on, and so
That's what I meant there. That's when you're workshopping, like you guys are probably editing and
it's all the above. Yeah, I mean certainly we would work on short plays in our writing classes, and obviously reading a lot of plays and but yeah, there was one class in particular where at the end of each semester you'd be in a rehearsal period for a piece that you wrote that your cast of actors would perform, which you just, again, nothing is more informative.
Right.
And you just learn by doing. And so I stuck with it. I was really excited. I didn't know what to expect. And then and I got very lucky in that Chris, I think my second year of graduate school, he had a friend who had been a director who was becoming an agent. He was a new agent, so he was looking for new clients, which is always, there's a big difference when agents have their roster and it's full, or if they're actually looking. And so he said, hey, I mentioned your name, so I sent him that play, and he said, oh, I like this, so he signed me there, which.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Even back then, did you find there were certain themes you were talking to back then? Like when I think about your, kid like Jake, for example, I think you're talking to certain themes there.
Yeah, I think certainly I mentioned that Chris's plays meant a lot to me, and I thought, and I think there were themes that he explored a lot. Mostly, I think, just how hard intimacy is, and how hard, just the sort of the mystery of other people. It's like, it's so, how strange it is that people can be so elusive and opaque to us, even the people that we really, sometimes even more so the people that we're, that we love the most. And so I think, relationships, intimacy, I was never a sort of joke comedy writer. I always, was more drawn to dramas, but I think there was something about, I think for, Chris's work, it's funny, I got feedback a lot in grad school that my plays were often sort of too internal, in that a lot of the, I guess I grew up reading, loving fiction and Henry James and Virginia Woolf, and all the drama is happening in characters' heads.
Right.
And there's always a challenge, with a play, because it has to be externalized. And I thought, to me, what I was so amazed by with Chris's writing was that his plays were incredibly psychological, incredibly internal. I think he once talked about how a play, his definition of a play was like the movement of the psyche. Okay. Rather than a character chasing a goal, which is also true. But there was something about the fact that he wasn't afraid of, like, he valued the sort of inner conflict and the inner drama as much as the outward drama, which really was something that it was like, oh, you can do that. That's not just the domain of short stories and fiction, where obviously you have access to their thoughts, but it is a huge challenge. So I think that was one thing that, how to honor that and how to really explore that stuff while still making it active and dramatic and externalizing it, because again, an audience, we don't have access to their thoughts. We see their eyes, certainly on film we see their eyes, but we see their behavior and we hear them talk. So I think that was certainly something I always gravitated towards was relationships, psychology, you know, the sort of interplay between what we're consciously chasing versus what we're unconsciously, you know, sort of lusting after. You know, I'm always more interested when a character's acting out of, when they have sort of concrete goals and also sort of impulses that maybe they don't even understand or can't articulate. I think it's always a little reductive in a story when a character's really just going after one thing and that's all they want. I mean, that's fine. But I was more interested in stuff that was just messier. And so that was something that I think, you know, Chris had really explored, and that was something that, I think even back then that was.
But I guess what I was thinking about was one of the things that I love about the shows I've seen that you've written on, or even the movie in particular. There's always secrets, you know, which I think is, I'm sure you love that because there's discovery.
Yeah.
Right. Is that intentional, or is that just instinct for yourself?
I think that's probably more instinct, only in the sense that I think you get interested in a character because there's layers and, you know, I think it's sort of just you're drawn to situations that you know, let me put it this way, I think I was always drawn to a situation where, or one thing I think has been consistent is when there's kind of a question at the center of a story for which there's no one easy answer, or if two characters can have a scene where they're arguing or they're, you know, or having a back and forth and they're both right. That was always very exciting to me. That if there was something, you know, I always, for that reason, people sometimes ask, you know, what do you hope an audience will take away from this? And that's always a really hard one for me to answer, because I feel like I don't set out with a sort of didactic goal. I mean, of course, there's things you hope, you know, come across and you hope to move people and, you know, inspire conversation. But I was always, you know, drawn to subjects where it felt like, oh, there's a really good dialectic here, where you can argue it both ways and you'll never fully get out of it. Because I feel like as a writer, you're sort of having this conversation with yourself, and so the more unresolvable it is, the better.
Well, some of the best storytelling is where, you know, you have your hero, the protagonist, and the antagonist who both think they're right. So
absolutely, we don't see ourselves as the villain. So hopefully, you know, I find it always really interesting in stories when a character that appears to be the antagonist, you know, early on, may earn our sympathy, or that those roles can sometimes switch, and vice versa. The sort of protagonists who we're sort of meant to align with, you know, that. Oh, actually, that's not what I fully expected.
Hey, let me ask you something, Greg. You've been writing for a long time. Did you get a sense of the themes and stuff that you were talking about, or did it take you 3 or 4 scripts to go, oh, I talked about this thing?
You mean working on a particular project?
No, just like, here's an example. So I was giving you kind of a generic version of this where I think everybody writes to certain themes. They're just sometimes hidden within it, and you don't realize you're actually recycling sometimes, like it's your go-to. You just don't even know it.
Yes.
But you love to talk about those particular things. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious if, for you.
I think a lot of that actually is, it's not something you choose, it's just who you are as a person, and the kind of stories that you gravitate to, that you want to tell. I think on the surface, you think a lot more about character, maybe you think about plot, you think about maybe what the ending could be or what the beginning could be. The theme, I think, becomes, right? It sort of evolves as you're...
Right, if you're connecting, I think the best writing happens when you're connecting with something that is somewhat unconscious. Like that's where the best ideas come from. So I think, there's always, you're going back and forth between thinking very consciously about all these elements, and then hopefully, if it's alive, if you just connect to it, you don't always know why, but usually, it's because there's something,
You know, one thing too I find is, what I'll sometimes do if I look back on the project afterwards and try to reflect on what are the themes here, I think the strongest themes, right, are often ideas you could posit as a question, as opposed to, this theme is revenge, you know, because it's not really a theme, right? But if it's, you know, is taking someone's life just, that's a theme, right? That's a question that you can have a theory, you can explore that. One character can feel one way about it, the other character could feel another way about it. By the end of the movie, you see if they turn, or if they, who's right or wrong, maybe neither. So I always like to look at theme as a question. Do you do the same way?
For sure. I think that's that. Well, that's very well put. Right, because again,
I told it to him last week.
Yeah, yeah, and also it's a question without an easy answer because then you've got stuff to work out.
To argue. Exactly. Or not.
Yeah.
When did you get to the play that changed your life, and how did that story come to you?
Yeah, so I mean that was definitely a Kid Like Jake was the play that kind of shifted things for me, which I was still in graduate school, and we had to it was like my third year, and they have you write what they call your thesis play, which is sort of an arbitrary way to put it. It just means that you put on a production with your a full production with classmates. And for that reason, I think I wanted to do sort of something with a small cast, chamber piece. I wanted to keep it sort of modest from a sort of production standpoint. And yeah, I was kind of spitballing ideas. And yeah, I mean certainly, and there were, I think with that play, I mean when I had very liberal, progressive parents. When I was 3, 4, and 5, I went through a very serious Princess Cinderella phase. That was all I wanted to do and dress up. And I think I was reading articles. This was like 2012, so this was well before, Caitlyn Jenner or Transparent. It was well before the conversation around gender identity had become such a touchstone in the culture. But there were articles about parenting and sexuality, gender identity. There was a conversation starting to happen. And I found myself sort of curious. I was like, God, for my parents, I wonder what it would have been like for them to sort of raise that kid now, because it was a very different conversation. And I found myself, sort of interested in the fact that in our attempts to be more and more, at least again, I should caveat this in certain places like New York and LA. I happen to grow up in a very progressive environment, but that in our attempts to be more and more inclusive, we end up creating more and more new labels, which then themselves become reductive and have to be sort of shaken off. And so I just found myself kind of curious about that.
I would say, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, please.
Like even within the LGBT community, I'm a black gay man who's married to a white man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
it's like there's still things that we deal with.
Oh yeah, it's
prejudices and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And so that question was kind of bubbling, and I think there was also for whatever reason. I hadn't actually written like a marriage at the center of a play. I was 27, 28. And I had.
Were you in love at the time?
I wasn't, and I definitely had not been married. But I think I was actually very nervous. I think one of the things, especially when you're young, is like when you're writing about things you haven't experienced firsthand, you're so scared of getting them wrong. And so I had noticed
and all that stuff.
Yeah, or just when it's not your lived experience. And so I noticed someone pointed out that in every one of your plays there may be a husband or wife, but it's never the central relationship. And so it's always nice to kind of challenge yourself. And I thought, okay, and then so I thought, okay, maybe I'll take a whack at this. So that play came out of those questions, and it's a play about two parents with a sort of gender, what we now call sort of gender expansive, 5-year-old.
What did you call it back then?
Back then I think gender non-conforming sometimes, which now people think, that has like negative connotations.
What year was this around?
This was 2011. Gender variant was a term. Gender variant. They call it gender variant play, which again. These terms, it's like, variant sounds pejorative.
Yes,
we got it.
Yes.
But that was.
Okay, let me just ask you this. I know I'm talking
Sure,
about. I apologize.
please.
Could your play go now, as is? Did you have to make some changes to it?
What's really interesting is that play I ended up adapting as a feature.
Right. I was going to get to it.
And I actually did, even between 2013 when the play was done in New York at Lincoln Center and 2017, just 4 years when we shot the movie, I did an updating pass on the because even in that, that was post Caitlyn Jenner, and it was and the culture, the conversation was rapidly changing. So No, I think if you did that play now, certainly if you were setting it now, I think it would require a rewrite, just because the what's taken for granted now is very different. But essentially, the play was about two parents, and they're in New York trying to get their 5-year-old into kindergarten, trying to decide can we afford private school, do we do public school, and their school director or preschool director who they're friends with sort of says, hey, if you're trying to get him a scholarship or into one of these magnet programs, why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't we talking about his gender variant play expanse? That's a big part of his personality. And the mom, Alex, who's the real protagonist of the play, is a little bit uncomfortable with that. And the question I think the play's wrestling with is, she feels that's a little reductive, or that's he's only 5, or is it right to speak for him before he can really speak or articulate it for himself? Is that a bias, a prejudice on her part? Is it protectiveness? And it's sort of, obviously with these things, it's never just one thing, and it kind of unravels a conversation within the marriage about gender and gender roles, and it kind of unearths some things they haven't really talked about. So it's sort of one of those plays where you pull a little thread that seems to be nothing, and then it's looking at all that. So, but yes, I think what ended up happening was, I got very lucky that it found its way to Paige Evans, who was running Lincoln Center 3, which was one of the spaces at Lincoln Center that was sort of devoted to new work and emerging artists. And she programmed it in 2013, and that which was just incredibly surreal and exciting. And then it was
that was just within a couple of years of you finishing it.
Yeah, so I wrote it in 2011, 2012. We it was produced by my cohort, my classmates in graduate school in 2012, and then it was 1 year later that we did it. So that was a hugely lucky break, and it was.
Did the play stay intact, or did you have to make changes when it moved?
No, it was I made rewrites. I mean, I think anytime you're in rehearsal, you hear things differently, and obviously also there's a difference. One of the sort of fun things about grad school is obviously most of us were in our mid to late 20s, and everyone's playing roles that are older than they are, and that's just the nature of going to school. So working with them, we had an amazing cast at LCD3. Carl Gugino did the lead, Peter Gross, Caroline Aaron, and Michelle Beck were the 4 actors. So it's obviously a different experience working with actors who have more lived experience. And so that play, it was after that production. I mean, that play I would say certainly changed my life in the sense that it got a production, so you feel sort of like, oh wow, this is real. And then it was at that point I started working with a manager who had helped Dan Halstead, who had helped a number of his clients who started as playwrights, eventually transition into TV and film, because I had taken a course in screenwriting and a course in TV writing as part of my my MFA program, but it was mostly theater focused. So I didn't have.
So you knew the fundamentals.
I knew the fundamentals. I obviously I got a sort of basic level of understanding, but I hadn't done it much. And I sort of had, again, kind of vague aspirations of I could see that TV was was the golden age of television. Amazing stuff was happening. I loved movies. But that was not my background. I didn't go to film school. And I had never been on set on a film set. So that was just not my world. So it was helpful to have.
The writing is very different too.
Say it again.
Not just the structure is different of the writing.
Oh, it's totally different.
Just the format.
Oh yeah.
The whole approach.
Yeah. No, and again, that's why I had Frank Pugliese, who's an amazing screenwriter, TV writer. He was my teacher in grad school for actually both screenwriting and television writing, and he was great. So I think it had been sort of broken down, in a classroom, and I had written things in that way. But there's nothing like actually doing it for real, and actually being on a set, and it's a whole different language. So yeah, after that play, I at least had someone in my corner who could help me transition, and because I guess I wasn't sure at that point. I want to write plays, but I'd like to explore other things too. And at that point, there was TV was kind of exploding. Ironically, you know, I actually came to TV sort of last because what ended up happening was Jim Parsons read the play, A Kid Like Jake, a couple years ago.
How did it come to?
I believe it was, you know, it was one of these funny things. I had that manager I mentioned just set me up with one of these general meetings. Okay. You know, you do a lot of meetings.
That's why you got to go to those.
That's why you do. Yeah, they're mostly just kind of nice conversations. But this one meeting I had with a producer named Jeanette Kahn, who was friendly with him, and she was aware that he had just started his own production company, and he was looking for material, you know, for him to develop and him to act in, and she just thought he would like it. So she just, you know, gave it to him to read. And it was a funny time because I will say after that play, which was 2013, you know, I felt all excited. No, I have a play that gets done. You know, then I wrote another play that just...
You're a city playwright.
Yeah, and then the next play I wrote was commissioned. Yeah, got passed on by everyone. No one ever produced it. I wrote another play that no one... I mean, there were a couple of years where it was like, oh man, it's...
Am I a one?
Yeah. No, seriously, it was, or it was like, oh wow, I thought I was doing so well, and now it's just nothing, and you know, and you're just, yeah, because it can be so fickle. So it wasn't until a couple years had passed. I think it was probably 2015, if memory serves. But yeah, so Jim read the play and wanted to, you know, option it, and I did know that I wanted to adapt it myself. You know, I didn't want someone else taking it.
Let me just ask you this.
Sure.
We have a bunch of writers, you know, in the room and listening to the show. How did you, having never written a feature film, how were you able to position yourself to be the one? Did you pitch why?
Yeah.
What happened?
I had written a feature. I'd written one, and I'd actually written. Collaborate on one. There was a project that didn't really go anywhere with a other writer producer that my manager had set me up with. I think basically I think I just said no. If you want the play, I want to adapt it myself more. And again, you always
when you have leverage is when you use it. I always tell writers.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. In some ways, I had no leverage because you know it wasn't like there was no one was bidding on this project. I didn't have leverage in the sense that it wasn't like a hot commodity, but it was sort of like, you know, I at least want to take a crack at it myself. And obviously, whenever you know you get hired as a screenwriter, of course, as a producer, they have the right to bring on another writer if they choose to later. So I think that was kind of, you know, all I said was, and I think it was just, you know, it's my play. I know these characters better than anyone else, you know.
Makes sense.
And I think that was just kind of my starting position, knowing full well that, they could always do something later. I mean, again, when someone, you know, pays you to write it, they have leverage later on. But it was important to me, and it was scary. But I was also very aware of, you know, I don't want to, you know, mess this up because I don't want to be sort of known as a playwright who can't, you know, write a screenplay. So it did mean, you know, I sort of used the play as source material the way you'd use a short story or a piece of IP, and really thought, okay, this is the story, but not the structure, because it's an entirely different beast. And so I didn't want to just...
And now you can really expand and go...
Or it was like, how do you tell the story on film, was a very different question. That the play is 11 scenes, the titular character, the kid in the play is entirely off stage. You never actually meet the kid. The audience is kind of...
What were some of the bigger changes adapting it for the screen?
Yeah, well, certainly, you know, one of the big ones was obviously in the play. You know, Jake is off stage the whole time, and you can do that in the play because the play is only 10 or 11 scenes, so you can conveniently have those scenes once he's gone to bed or when he's at school. In a film, I felt pretty strongly early on that in a film where we're just seeing much more of their lives, if we never see this kid, it's going to start to look like a sort of George and Martha.
Well, you would hear him off screen.
You'd hear it, or it just felt like, well, if these parents never spend time with their kid, it's just going to seem like this is a story about bad parents. Like, where is the kid? You know, once you're seeing just that much more of their lives. Populating the world, you know, there were a lot of off-stage characters in the play who you heard about that became characters in the film. Mostly just, it was structure. It was just, you know, it had an entirely different structure. You know, this, you know, okay, what's the sort of, it had the same kind of inciting incident, but you know, it was entirely reconceived in terms of just, okay, how do we meet these characters? How do we learn about them? And just making sure that how I thought a lot about how we're going to, what information we are getting strictly visual, because I knew the language stuff would be there. So yeah, it was kind of opening it up. It was, there were new characters, there were some new subplots. The play is just by nature much more contained.
You were saying it was 10 or 12 scenes, and so was it thinking about, well, what maybe happened in between some of these scenes before or after?
Yeah, absolutely.
Filming those blanks.
Yeah, I mean, what was lucky about it, what made it easier was the play. Even the play was, I think it's 11 scenes, but it does take place over the course of months. So at least it wasn't one of those it wasn't a play that was sort of all in one room, all in one night. That's a very hard thing to crack open. At least this play did gap some time, and so yes, there were events that there were story events that happened in the play off stage that
it allows you to have B and C.
Yeah, exactly. That led themselves, but certainly also building out the husband's world more than was in the play, and. Just figure, and also just looking at the sort of, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 structure of a screenplay, and figuring out, okay, this is what it's going to look like. Knowing that, of course, there were certain pivotal scenes that of course I did, pilfer from, and because and use, but I didn't want the whole thing to feel like it had just been repurposed.
Who brought in Claire, and how did you get? Is it Silas? Is that
Silas Howard? Yeah, Silas Howard. So. Funnily enough, Jeanette Kahn, that same producer who initially gave it to Jim, she was, I joked that she was like the sort of fairy godmother for that whole project, because she and Claire are actually good friends, and it was one of those kind of spooky, kismet things. They were having dinner. This is as if I remember the story right. They were having dinner, and Claire, she has 3 kids now, but she had 1 at the time. Her son Cyrus, they had been at the park. And she had this experience that she was telling Jeanette about this experience she had, where they were at the park and they saw another kid playing, and she actually wasn't sure if it was a boy or a girl. They had a sort of boy's haircut, but he was wearing a little skirt or something. And she ended up talking to it was a boy, and she ended up talking to his father. It was a gay couple actually, and they were saying, we're really nervous. He's about to start kindergarten, and we don't know whether to just let him dress the way he dressed at home. Also, like it was extra layered because we're a gay couple, and we don't want to think we're actually imposing that, but this is really what he likes.
But they groomed them.
Yeah, exactly. There was an added level of self-consciousness. She said, then they said, how do you protect him without getting in his way? And so Claire was relaying this story to Jeanette, and Jeanette said, "Oh my God, you have to read this movie that I'm developing." It's literally, that's the conversation. So
how kismet is that?
It was very spooky, really, really spooky, and it's one of those moments that you have to kind of remember. Sometimes just trust the universe. And it was actually even, to be honest, it was even a little spookier because when we were, I had been a huge fan of Claire's since my so-called life, but a huge Homeland fan. I'd always just totally adored her, and I'd always thought she'd be amazing. And there's actually, it's funny, I have somewhere, I think I sent her at some point, I have saved, when you're when a movie's in development, you get these endless lists of every actress in the age range who could possibly, endless lists, and I
and
did.
Your hopes go up and down.
Well, yeah, and you just I didn't have a ton of it. I had sort of input, but I did email one of our producers saying, for what it's worth, I do think Claire Danes would be totally perfect in this role. He said, "Oh yeah, she's great, of course." And that was maybe 6 months before this conversation with Jeanette happened. And so I like to tell her, I called it. Yeah, I did think she'd be sort of pitch perfect in the role. And yeah, so Jeanette gave it to her, and then we got this email that was like she read it and she wants to do it, and it was just and it was one of those things. It was, I think it was like she was still doing Homeland, Jim was still doing Big Bang, so they had to make sure their hiatuses would overlap. But for some reason, the schedules had changed, and actually they would overlap. There was this summer when they both were actually both going to be off, and they both and she lived in New York as well.
I was thinking about something about a lot of people are like, how in the world Jim Parsons, how is he playing a very straight character, blah blah blah, and I'm like, that's what they want to do. They really want to show you that they could do something else. Like, there's a reason they'd rather do an indie film to show you what they can do. No, for sure.
And the character, the father, and he's sort of this very non-machismo. He's a therapist. He's very sensitive. That's one of the things that kind of gets explored. Is he's straight, but he's not a sporty, macho dad.
Yeah. He's an average person.
Yeah, he's a Brooklyn dad. I mean, which again, so I think I think that was something that appealed to Jim. Was he thought it was a character that was something that he could play. I think he did a really beautiful job.
Sure.
But yes, I mean that was certainly, I think, I'm sure that's part of his, what appealed to him too.
And Silas, how did?
Yeah, so Jim and Claire got attached, and then we were on the hunt for a director.
Mm-hmm.
And Silas had worked on Transparent. He'd done a movie called By Hook or By Crook.
Shout out to Pose and Steve.
Yeah,
and all my dudes over there.
He's just so wonderful. And so we just had I forget when I first talked to him, but I think he read it and expressed interest, and he was really lovely, and so, I didn't know what to expect as the writer of this feature, knowing that okay, it's not theater. A film director sometimes wants to just have total auteur control, and Silas was just so wonderfully collaborative and really so I was on set the whole time, and he was a really wonderful facilitator and collaborator, and really valued my input in the process, which was great, because again it was my first feature. I didn't know what to expect for how involved I'd be, and
Silas is a trans
man. Silas is a trans filmmaker.
So I'm sure they brought some great stuff to it.
Yeah, no, that was the thing. He brought his own life experience to it, and that was one thing that he so I think he brought just an amazing level. I mean, not just lived experience, but also just a kind of real generosity. Mm-hmm. And it was one thing that he, he really appreciated that this was a story about two, cis straight parents trying to do the right thing and trying to understand their son, who may or may not be trans. He didn't, he came at it, was like the last thing he wanted to do was make something sort of didactic or preachy, but because he's lived through those conversations, and he's had and so that was a real blessing, and he's also just a great director, and so it was
it's some beautiful work. Maybe Rich, did you watch it last night, Rich?
Yeah,
you watched it last night.
I rented it on Amazon last night.
Oh, great!
So watching it. It was great.
So I produced a movie called Mermaid about a little girl who is trans. Is about her wanting to get away from everything and become a mermaid and just get away. Yeah. And we just submitted it to Sundance and Berlin and South by South, and we shot it on Cape Cod for 6 weeks last year. And you've seen the trailer for it, and some other people. And so the issue we had, I'm curious for you guys. We wanted a kid who was probably somewhere on the spectrum where they might be, whatever. Mm-hmm. But our problem was our kid was 10. Your kid was like 4 or 5. Yeah. So that's even harder. So we ended up hiring a kid who was 12, who was non-binary.
Interesting.
I was shocked to even know that they were at that age, but the kids today, are so...
Yeah, and it's right, because we were shooting in 2017.
Right.
So again, even a little bit before, I get things have changed. So, I mean, certainly Silas was very, I think, correctly adamant. He said, I don't want to cast a 5-year-old who doesn't, a 5-year-old boy who doesn't want to put on dress. Yeah. So I think that was, part of the casting, challenge was, we ended up casting a kid named Leo James Davis, who was wonderful. And actually he was very much, the princess boy who loved it. I remember Silas sending me a video the first time we hung out with Leo, and Leo was trying on some different costumes, just getting a huge kick out of it. There was actually a very funny moment that we did have a body double, because of course, child, you have him for 5. And the double did not want to put on the tutu. And I remember there was a scene, and Silas actually said, "No, don't make him. It's fine. He does in this scene because that was a very strong, kid. I think Leo was 6 when he shot it, playing 5.
Wow.
But his and his mother, it was funny. She was actually she's a manager, and Leo had not acted before that, or maybe done something, and she was not pushing him into, I think he had expressed interest, but she did not want to sort of push him into anything. But I think she saw the breakdown and thought, oh God, wow, they're like describing, my kid. I guess we should at least consider.
Didn't have much of
I think he'd
At all
done
acting
maybe one
experience.
thing before.
Yeah.
And again, I think with again, he was 6 when we shot it. So yeah, no, I think, and he's actually gone on to do it. He was in Escape with Dan Mora and some other things. He's working.
Yeah.
But
our girl was born a girl, but now they're non-binary and still figuring out who they are. And the interesting thing about our film is we wanted to make sure that whoever the kid was, they weren't just your typical, like, I hate to use it, soft, kid who's obviously, whatever. This kid had to be like, because it's like rural town, like they can fish, they can hunt, like there needs to be like a little tomboy almost. Yeah. So that's what made it even different, that they still could do all that, and yet they knew they were a girl. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, and we found this girl who, she's an actor too, who she lives in like the same type of area we shot on the Cape. Yeah. She lives in like an island off of like South Carolina or something, fishes and hunts and gets worms, you know what I mean? It just worked out, just perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, and certainly I think, what was also, I think frankly helpful is we were certainly not looking for a trans kid. Sure. It was 5, 6 years old. No one was pretending to make any kind of assessment, and that was part of what the movie was about. Was that it was not explicitly that was not explicit the story. So it was more about we want a kid who's gonna enjoy this and like these things. And there was some of the best footage I remember is Leo. Also was an amazing artist, as it was our character. Our stylist just shooting all this footage of Leo just drawing. And he just said, "Can you draw us a Sleeping Beauty or something?" And he just and there's some amazing footage that wasn't. It might have been scripted as a sort of, or half scripted as part of a montage, but there was some amazing footage he got just filming Leo just being himself, and that was really fun. That was really special. Yeah.
So, how did you move into TV?
So I wrote the movie.
See, I did that, Krista. We're going to eventually.
Yeah.
I got you.
You said we got to talk. I had an interest. Certainly I think the hardest thing strategically is sort of getting your first TV job is often the hardest. I think, I was lucky in that, I had this play that got produced, and then I adapted as a feature, and then I sold a different idea as another feature idea that I wrote first. And I think it was around 2018, I did my first mini room. Amy Littman, showrunner, legendary. She had read.
That's a good start.
Yeah, she had read A Kid Like Jake. I think she read the play, and she was looking to build a room for this a mini room, this AMC show that was not yet. It didn't actually end up getting made. It was a shame. But yeah, she was keen and hired me just for. She kind of decided it was like, rather than hire one staff writer for all 16 weeks, she actually hired like 3 or 4 sort of very inexperienced staff writers for the first month.
Really?
Because she wanted more, voices in the room.
In the beginning.
Okay.
It was a show called Paradise Lost. So she gave my first taste, and then that show didn't end up going, and then about probably a year later, my friend Sarah Burgess, amazing playwright, who I knew we'd come up together in theater. We were both in the same group called the Ars Nova playwrights group. She was writing the 3rd season of American Crime Story about Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton, and they'd sort of gotten a kind of secret blinking green light, and she was looking ahead and reached out and said, are you around? We might be doing a room. And so I interviewed for that job and was a staff writer on American Crime Story, and that was my first sort of full writer's room on a show that got made. And so those were my first.
Coming in hot on two strong.
No, it was and that was a really intimidating. Again, it was very small. That crime story was just 4 of us in the room. Yeah.
Because there are many series, they're just a little.
And the one play in the one movie. One play in the one movie was really the calling card to get you the first AMC.
I think I'm trying to think at that point.
Can you slide your?
Oh, sure.
Just that way.
Me or the
no
way?
That. There you go.
Like that? Okay, great.
There you go.
Please. Yeah, I mean, you know, there were there was another. I did write another play in 2015, 16. That was another sample that had some readings, and then it was almost done in 2020 in London, but then the pandemic, it fell apart for that reason. So there were, I did have, and like I said, there was this feature called Oliver Sipple that I wrote for Warner Brothers at the time. So there were other things I'd written, depending, and that's one thing that certainly. And I guess the other thing that I wrote, I did the Humanitas New Voices program. Actually, you mentioned Ben Watkins. I think you mentioned he was my like designated mentor. He was fantastic.
I was his number 2 for a year.
Oh wow, yeah, no, he's fantastic. So I developed a pilot with him as part of that program. So I was certainly, you know, writing other things, and then depending on, you know, the nature of the show, you know, okay, I think this is the best thing for them to read because it really speaks to, you know, tone and the world. But it's and certainly it was relationships. I mean, certainly with American Crime Story, you know, Sarah Burgess and I knew each other as playwrights, and you know, and yeah, that room was very intimidating because there was so much research. You can imagine it was like a grad school seminar. It was fascinating. It was really amazing.
I call those rabbit hole rooms.
Yeah, oh my God! I remember that I sort of got the job a week before we started, and then they delivered like 5 books, and I remember texting Sarah. I was like, I don't know if I can, because they were each like 500 pages about, you know, the Clintons, and I was like, I don't know if I can read all of these by Monday. She was like, yeah, but we were sort of catching up to where she was.
Like, where's ChatGPT?
Oh my God, yeah, it's a different world. This was very much pre-ChatGPT. So yeah, it was that was a lot of research and the, you know, the sense of responsibility to the subject matter and the story. But no, that was sort of my first, you know, big full writer's room, and then after that. Then COVID happened.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, this weird thing. It made no sense all of a sudden.
Fake news.
Yeah. And I did a writer's room that was entirely remote. Which was a different, on a Peacock show called One of Us is Lying. That was kind of a Breakfast Club meets murder mystery. It was which is very different from Crime Story, much lighter fare. And then the next thing that happened was Accused, which was how I met.
Another good one.
Which
Was that from Howard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's, so funnily enough, Howard Gordon. Yes. So Howard.
You said it like that's your cousin.
I just want to make sure that he was at home.
Yes, Howard Gordon.
Everybody knows.
Legendary.
You know,
Yeah.
Howard.
What was sort of funny was, again, in terms of the kismet, you know, trusting the universe, Claire and I became close friends doing the movie, and you know, I stayed in touch a little bit in New York, and she was shooting the last season of Homeland in Morocco, and said, hey, you know, we're gonna be in Morocco for 6 months. If you're near Morocco, come visit. We have a big house. And I was like,
send for a brother.
I was like, I can be near Morocco. I can. There's planes. I think I can make that happen. So I was like, you know, yeah, I mean, sure. So I went to visit for about a week, and the day I visited set, Howard happened to be there, and so we met socially just at the, you know, at the Video Village, and talked and had sort of a nice chat. And, oh, great, you know, cool. Yeah. And I think it was a year later, he was developing the adaptation of Accused, which had been a BBC show for Fox. Okay. And it's this, for people who don't know, it's a crime anthology show where literally every episode is a different story, different character, different world. And there was one story of the original about what at the time they called a transvestite character. We don't use that term now, but it was a cross-dresser, and I think that the original, it was Sean Bean in the British version, and it was a character who was sort of he went out as a cross-dresser at night, and it wasn't entirely clear in that whether it was a trans story or a cross-dressing story. It was again, it was very very 2010, you know, and they really liked that as an idea, and they were looking for a writer to adapt that. And so I think his executive had read A Kid Like Jake, or someone recommended me to him.
So
And
these
it
sound like they're almost like freelancers. Are they?
Yeah, this was a freelance gig. This was the show was not picked up yet, but Fox was essentially rather than shooting a pilot, they were kind of paying for 3 or 4 scripts.
Okay.
And Howard knew that there was this episode of the original that he wanted to find a writer for. So I think I was still in the room for One of Us Is Lying, and just got some random message that they're interested in you for just as a one-off. Right. You know, we don't know if the show's gonna go, but it was just one-off adaptation. So I watched the original and I zoomed with Howard. He was like, "We met in Morocco," and I was like, "I know, I remember." But so it wasn't because of that, but it certainly, I think when he saw my name, he thought, "Oh, is he the guy that I met through Claire?" And so they hired me to just do this one-off adaptation, and I thought, well, sure, over the holidays, why not? You know, it's a fun chance. And he just really liked what I did. He really responded to it, and then the show did get picked up, and so he asked me to do the room. Right. And then that was a really intense experience, because I ended up I was again hired for a certain amount of time, and then kept getting sort of extended, and by the end of that first season, it was really just Howard and me.
Really?
I was on set a lot, and got a lot of set experience. And Accused is a very unique beast. It also, I think it was a 12-episode order, then they extended it to 15, and so it kind of kept ballooning.
So when you were first brought on, were you brought on again as a staff writer, or was it a bumped up?
I was brought on as a co-producer.
Okay.
And then
you got a bump?
I got a bump. I was brought on as a co-producer, and then at a certain point, I think when they had extended me a few times, my agent said, "Can we get another bump? I think we need to call him a producer." So I was a producer on the first season ultimately, because it kind of kept going, and which was great. I think more importantly was just all
the writers in the room are very just.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a lucky. It was a lucky break. It was. I mean, it was hard. I mean, it was. The most valuable thing was just being on set, and also being involved in the edits. I was learning all that stuff for the first time. I had been on set for A Kid Like Jake, but I had not been part of the edit process.
You said hard. What was one of the things that maybe one or two that stand out to you as really challenging at that time?
I think there's nothing like the. I'll say this. I think it was just writing while being an on-set producer and doing so many things at once. With American Crime Story, I did the room, and then they were going into production right before COVID, and then everything had to get delayed. Right. So I was in the writer's room. I was not on set for American Crime Story, so I was not working on the show when it was actually being made. So there's nothing like the sort of crazy, adrenaline rush of knowing pages have to get written in time for this production calendar. Yeah. Especially, I think when season 1, when they sort of said, "Oh, actually, we want 3 more." Oh God! And we were already, racing to produce these 12.
We peaked right here.
And so just being sort of in the trenches with Howard, just generating scripts. I mean, just writing. I mean, I think I wrote 3 or 4 of that first season. With some were co-written, but yeah, just the pace of you finally get one in, and then oh my God, and also just the zooms and the castings, and also being in post while you're in production. And so that was really just a huge learning experience. And Howard,
you went to college.
Sorry?
You went to college fast.
Yeah. No, it was like boot camp. Yeah, and Howard was amazing in that way, because I think he's obviously has so much experience and was an amazing mentor, but also just kind of just let me take a crack at it. I mean, I remember at some point he said, I want to. He sort of, we were looking at one episode in particular, and he said, why don't you write down your notes for I want to see how you think about it. Okay. I want to I think it'd be a really good exercise for you just to literally watch the cut and write down all the things I wanted to change or try, because again, editing is its own skill, and so he was very game to just
been there a lot.
You write it on the page, you write it
you're writing it again so, and based on the footage you have, and so so the fact that he was so game to let me in those conversations was huge, because there's nothing.
See, that's what's missing today. We talk about this a lot, Greg. Like, there's a lot of showrunners, like, nobody's raising the kids anymore, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody's like, well, I'm busy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you gotta find that number 2, that number 3 to really learn from if they have time.
Howard was amazing that way. I mean, and also was very and he's also, I think he came up with a crop of writers that he talks about how important it is to have collaborators that you trust, like that building your cohort, because TV is just too hard. You cannot do it all yourself, and if you don't build those relationships and empower people so that they can help you later, that it's both generous and very self-interest. I mean, that you want to have a team of people that you trust. So so he was an amazing mentor and collaborator, and basically said, listen, if we get a season 2, we're doing this together. We're co-writing it, together, because he said, I don't want to do this alone. We're doing this again. And so when they did want a season 2, we were the 2 co-showrunners, which was an amazing experience. So
wow.
Yeah,
that's like a dream.
Yeah, no, it was.
Some people don't know the work you did to get
It's
there.
a lot. Yes. I mean, no, I think if there's one thing I've been pretty good at, my feeling is like there's so little you can control. Like there's that all you can control is just do the best work you can and be as prepared as just be ready when someone gives you that opportunity. So no, I work my ass off on.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
You delivered each time.
I think so. Yeah. I think he felt I did. So I like to think I did.
It sounds like he wasn't rewritten a lot.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. No. I think certainly. Yeah. I think that, it's well, and TV's a very. I think the other really good thing I learned on Accused was because it was like all these little movies. It was a lot of different worlds, a lot of different characters, and so it really was a good way to sort of just flex muscles. I think anytime I think the hard thing with TV is when it's your own play or your own feature, or it's an idea that came from you, it connects to something in your unconscious and really good material comes out. When you're sort of tasked with executing someone else's vision, it's really easy to not connect it to something in your unconscious and just kind of write something that's just kind of flat. And that happens a lot because again, it didn't come from you. So how do you access the same like really good stuff without writing a totally different show? And so Accused was an interesting kind of in between, because even though it was a television show, each story was its own thing, so that for my episode it still kind of was my own thing. I wasn't imitating someone else's voice, and it was a chance to write all these different worlds, and so it was kind of a crash course in sort of switching gears creatively, because that I think is the hardest thing, just in any writer's room, is how do you do your own best work while still staying in this sort of world of the show, and it can, because I think sometimes those it's actually this is actually a great story. Is Amy, and I'll give you examples. Amy Littman, the first one to give me a job in television, we co-wrote an episode, and in TV you work on the outline, so we'd gone 5 drafts of the outline. And when we had first had coffee when I interviewed the job, she had said to me, she's like, "Oh, I love playwrights, but playwrights, sometimes it's hard because you playwrights sometimes write these amazing scenes that are just not what I need, and they're your own." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I was sort of, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that playwright. So then when it came time to write a draft, I tried to stay really close to the outline, and I because I didn't want to be one of those sort of crazy things, and so I turned in, half a script because we were sort of splitting it up, and she wrote me a really long email that was incredibly kind but incredibly honest, and it basically said, "Here's the thing, I have no doubt in your ability. There's not nearly enough invention or creativity in these pages. This is basically the outline in script form." And I thought, oh, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I thought it was the outlines in script form. And she said, "But I've read your plays. I know you can do this. Like, what I really need is take the outline and make it specific and detailed." And I was like, "Oh, so just write it like I was writing a play." and she was like, and so she said, but it was a really, I think back on that, because I think it would have been so easy to just say, "Oh, that's a bad but she sort of identified exactly what was missing, which was that sort of spark of imagination, because I'd been trying so hard to kind of not.
Well, they okayed the outline.
Yeah,
Why would you
exactly.
do it?
And she's like, this happens all the time. Writers don't understand what you're actually being asked to do. And so I said, okay. And so and she's like, so why don't you just take, these two scenes, and I sent her, and I sort of said, oh, I can actually just write the way I can have more fun with it. And she's, oh my God, night and day. Like, it was such an amazing lesson in that, but it is that balance. How do you still execute the outline, but not flatten yourself and not flatten your writing, because then it does feel kind of generic and dull.
Well, that reminds me of is just coming from a directing perspective. A lot of times on the shows I've worked on, showrunners have said to me, or the writer of that particular episode said to me, look, we trust that you understand the show, you know the show, you know the characters, we're not worried you're gonna do something else. So, but that being said, we want you to, find your way to put your little stamp on there in places where I've even had at times a showrunner say to me, make your movie.
Right.
We know you're going to make our show, but also make it your movie too, right?
Right.
So from a writer, do you feel like, is that in
because when you're kind of just executing something as an exercise, or kind of trying to you just feel it. It's not. Something has to really. You have to be as excited about it as though it were your own movie. And so that was I've seen Amy since then, and I've told her that it was, I think it was a very smart move on her, but it was but very kind, because she did not say, oh God, this sucks. She gave me a chance to actually sort of do a redo, and then she was quite happy with it. And I was like, oh, but mostly what I took away from that, I was like, oh, okay, I can still have as much fun as though it were my own play. And then if she doesn't use that detail, great, fine. But she's like, I'd so much. She said, I'd so much rather you write something that was 10 pages too long.
See, I had a reverse situation like that, where I did the outline, they loved it, and then when I wrote it exactly the way, because I was like, well, I don't want to mess it up, so I did it exactly the way they said it. And then when we were getting season 2, I went to lunch with the showrunner, and he's like, you're the only one to bring it back. I was like, me? He's like, but here's what I need you to do on the next script. I was like, well, you could change it like that. Why would I just... He was like, no, that's why I brought you. Same sort of thing. And I was like, you could have told me then, I would have just, anyway, it's just fun.
No, it's well, and TV's weird that way, because the outlines get so much attention. That by the time you go to script, the outline is often so detailed. But yes, so knowing, okay, fundamentally the outline, the outline is a map of what needs to be gotten across. But yeah, hopefully you should still have creative ideas for
scene work.
Yeah, scene work. And so that was a really good lesson. And so I think certainly by the time I was working on Accused, I was pretty good at that. Which of saying, okay, here's the confines of what the story is, but I still want to find ways to make it,
because you still end where you need to end. You still hit all the beats.
It's exactly. It's the scene work, and it's letting your imagination still. It's sort of staying open to ideas for details and moments that were not in the outline, because that's sometimes the best stuff.
So how did you get to? This is all great, but I know we're taking some time. How did you get to The Beast in Me?
Yeah.
And how did that show come to you?
Yeah, so The Beast in Me was interesting, because Accused, Howard and I started the writer's room for season 2 of Accused, and then the writer's strike happened. COVID was this weird little blip. And so we were put on pause. I think we were 4 weeks in. And then the strike ended, and we were unpaused, but Fox at that point, because we could no longer produce it for March of 2020, whatever year that was, it was like, they weren't sure if they still wanted the show. It was with this limbo that 1 week becomes a month, becomes 2 months, and Claire had been attached to The Beast in Me for about 4 years, actually. Gabe Rotter, who created the show, had sold it to Netflix, I think back in 2020, and it had gone through some different iterations, they had a whole other writer's room at one point, and it had taken twists and turns, and then it was around, I think this was December 2023, they sort of expressed to Claire, yeah, we're really interested in making this for real. And she was sort of thinking, okay, who do I know? She was an EP on the show, and started thinking,
I noticed a lot of big people on that.
Yeah.
EPs. I was like,
it's a lot of amazing people who
Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, no,
I was
that's
shocked by that one.
yeah, no, well, I think it was so Gabe initially. It was Conan's company that initially developed it, and then they sold it to Netflix. So it's again, and initially Joey Foster was the one who got attached to direct, and then so again, because of the 5 years, there have been a lot of people. It's like a little engine that could somehow, yeah. So Claire, was looking for the right team to sort of bring this over the finish line, and. We had worked together on the movie, hadn't worked together since. I think she saw correctly that the subject matter and the sort of premise of the show was very much in my wheelhouse. And she
becomes
also
the king of the thrillers.
yeah. And it was funny because I mentioned that play that I'd written that was never produced, but she'd come to a reading of that play, and that was a play called Free Fall. That was a two-hander, just two people all in one room. And sort of about sociopathy largely, and so she remembered that play in particular as having a lot of thematic overlap. So she thought of me, and she also knew that, and she also has this relationship with Howard Gordon, obviously from Homeland, and it was sort of a funny coincidence that I happen to be now working so closely with Howard, and so she was like, "Well, this is actually sort of perfect." The only slight hiccup was I thought, well, are we doing Accused season 2? Are you available? And I said, I think I am, because we haven't heard anything, and it seems like it's dying on the vine, and I'm waiting to see, and obviously I was so excited. So she brought Howard and I on and Gabe was wonderfully open and collaborative. I mean, he's such a wonderful guy, and it was such an exciting premise, and so the three of us had a Zoom and felt like, oh yeah, actually, this could be a really good sort of collaboration. And then, as is always the case, then Fox said, oh no, we do want Accused, actually, and we want it for the fall. And so all of a sudden we were like, well, I guess we'll do both. We'll do both at once. So it was completely perverse, but we actually did both shows simultaneously.
Oh my God!
Yeah. So I thought season one.
But you guys were on Zoom. Is that why it worked?
It worked because So the Beast and Me was in person. The room for that we had. Dave, Howard, and I, and 3 other writers in person. Accused was always going to be a remote room, and because Accused didn't require a season story to break, it was individual. Each individual episode, it was like I had my own episode that I'd written, and then we were sort of supervising other writers, freelance writers, who were writing and rewriting scripts as needed. So as a result, Accused, we had 2 co-EPs. Who were sort of our staff, but we weren't meeting daily in the same way because it was more it was more like sort of independent study. Howard.
So here's the outline.
And here's the outline. We'll give you notes. But it was, even so. I mean, it was completely insane because I think it was March of 2024. We started the Beast and Me room in LA. We restarted the Accused room remotely. Accused went into production.
Well, you're shopping that fast. Netflix usually takes a while.
Yeah, Accused went into production in Toronto that June.
Wow.
We went into production on this in September.
Wow. So on a given Monday through Friday, are you in 2 rooms bouncing back and forth?
Yeah. So Accused didn't have. So it was like I'd do the Beast room, and then we'd have these periodic Zooms for Accused. We'd be doing casting Zooms and productions, so it was literally. I mean, it was manic. I mean, it was completely, and every weekend was just writing.
So your assistant had to be on point.
Yeah, it was, and so the Beast writers' room, Howard and I were constantly having to sort of interrupt and say, okay, hold please, we have to do a call or this.
And casting,
right? Casting directors. Also Accused had to do cast for every episode, so it was. So we were because again we were in pre-production for Accused by April, May, as we were writing Beast, and so it was just, I think it was like, I felt enormously grateful and lucky because it was this time after this right when, no one was working, and I was, so I felt so blessed, also just terrified and exhausted, but I wasn't gonna complain because it was, I sort of said, well, if they want both shows, we'll find a way to do it. But it was a sort of perverse experiment, and somehow we pulled it off.
I dig it. How did you guys come to Matthew? How did you guys?
How did we come to Matthew? Yeah, I mean, he was always, again, I think it was...
He was always at that list?
Yeah, I mean, he's so incredible. I mean, what was, to me, so exciting was, I knew what an amazing actor he was. I don't think we knew how, just how good he'd be in this role. I mean, I think he's blown away. Again, our expectations were very high because we knew he'd be amazing, but it is a very different type of role for him than what he'd been known for. So he was really exciting.
You have to have charm too.
Yeah, no, it's a really hard part to. You have to do so many things. You have to have charm. You have to have menace. You have to be able to go toe to toe with Claire Danes. Yes. You have to be smart. You have to be good with language. I mean, it was a big choice, and I think also
he's on screen a lot.
Oh yeah.
So
It's a two man. I mean, it's him and Claire.
Yeah.
And so look. I think he was always, he was always one of those choices. And I think what was also especially exciting about Matthew is that it also wasn't expected. I think because again, there have been, there are a lot of great actors who have done not this role, but sort of flashy villain, charismatic performances, and this was so different from what Matthew did in The Americans and other shows, so it felt both like we felt safe and confident that he could do it, and also felt like, oh, this is gonna be really exciting.
I was telling Kristen off before you walked in, he does this thing where, this is what I'm searching for in actors, by the way. I come from theater, like you. He breathes. It's just and he just says his line. It's just like this thing. You never see him calculating anything. He stares at you, and it's just like...
No, he and Claire are two of the best listeners I've ever seen. Their ability to just... I mean, again, it's one of those simple acting things. Like, of course, acting is listening, but they are just... It's unreal. It's so powerful and so satisfying, and it makes them so easy to cut because like all their
so many choices.
It's infinite choices. They're all good. They're all different. They're all. It's just they're both so alive, and they're also, they're both amazing. That you watch them on set and it feels real and dynamic and spontaneous. And it's not until you watch the episode later when you're cutting it you realize how many smart choices they've made, because it looks so effortless, because they're in the moment. But there is so much careful thought in sort of their trajectory and how they sort of plot that. I don't know how they do it, especially because you're shooting everything out of order. Yeah. So it's really wild. No, Matthew was he's just a total dream and just the loveliest person.
Did they have a lot of ideas and things for their characters that they wanted to talk
Yeah,
about?
they did. I mean, I think Claire and Matthew are both they're both just such pros, and they both have some. They certainly are not. I mean, their ability to just show up having done the work at home, they certainly don't, they're not needy. But at the same time, anytime they have an idea, it's a good one, and they're smart, and we did a few days of rehearsals before we started shooting. It was really helpful. Because again, especially a lot of these scenes are really heavy dialogue.
Especially, I was thinking about that, and sorry to all of you guys who are in the room, you guys haven't seen the show yet, I apologize. Thursday.
Yes, Thursday.
November 13th, come check it out, Netflix. But there's a lot of two-hander just scenes where they're just it's a competition.
I was thrilled. I mean, I'm just so happy we got to do it.
Because you're always like going, is he gonna kill her now?
Yeah.
Is he gonna,
yeah. No, that was I think why Claire did think of me for this as a collaborator for this, because she knew that was kind of my favorite thing to write. Yeah.
Like, you know how to put people in a room and let them fight.
Yeah. Because I do think there's a misconception. I think there's like a stigma against long talky scenes on film for good reason, and often my scenes are too long and too talky, but I do think some dialogue.
Not if it's push and pull though.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think there's sometimes a false distinction between dialogue and action, because if dialogue is working, dialogue can be action, particularly for characters like these two for whom language is so important. She's that language is a weapon. It's a tactic. It's a strategy, and they're so when it is active, then I think we really enjoy it. But you do need virtuoso.
And also, I was thinking about like when you have the audience knows something that the characters don't know, and the character knows something. Yeah. So we know that he did the thing, and they don't know. So it's like, don't go in the room, bitch. Like,
no, I mean, and that's just the fun of thriller, affair. I mean, it's and just I think the fun thing for us was the constant seesawing between who's predator, who's prey, who's manipulating whom, who's pulling the strings, who's actually the puppet, and that flips back and forth throughout the series.
Yeah, there's a big reversal or twist in every episode. At some point.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're always like.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I mean, Howard is he has such an incredible sort of spidey sense for that kind of he's been asked on some panels about is there a formula? How does he think of it? And it's intuitive. I mean, just having done this for so many years, but just how to keep
rhythmic.
It's rhythmic. Yeah.
Sure.
And how to. But that was something things did shift in the breaking of it, of like, okay, where does this card get flipped over? How does this happen? Sometimes you think things need to happen sooner than they do.
Sure.
And actually giving things more room to breathe makes it feel more propulsive, even though you're actually slowing it down. Right. And that's something I've learned a lot from Howard is how to how to sort of shape a whole season.
I know you. Okay, you say something.
Oh no, just to say I'm also curious, because I loved, Brittany Snow was amazing, and David Lyons as Agent Ed.
Awesome.
He's an amazing actor. I worked with him on The Cape, superhero show pre-Arrowverse and everything, and it was always such. I remember working with him. He's just such great power and emotion. I was curious, how did he come about?
Both Brittany and David auditioned. That was one thing that I was also blown away by, was the caliber of actors that
they're still willing
to tape. I mean, because I've been a fan of Brittany's for years, and I said, Brittany's no tape. No, David Lyons taped, and he just made an incredible tape as did Brittany. So that, and there's again, obviously, it's offers are very exciting, but there's nothing like seeing people actually show you what they would do with it, and you just watch, you say, oh. There it is.
Great actor.
Yeah, no, they're both.
It's all in the casting.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
They bring it to life. They elevate it. They do all.
No, it's the most important choice. I mean,
I was telling Greg, not this specifically. I know you had your hands in every episode, but your episodes in particular stood out to me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
And specifically, of course, the finale episode. Shut up, Michael.
Spoiler alert.
No, I'm not going to give anything away. It's specifically the finale episode where, in particular, it's the back and forth. It's the fights. It's the argument. It's the one-uppance. Is that what you say? The uppance? What is it?
I'll let you get away with it.
Yeah, that's how we say it in the project. You know what I mean? But it's like that push and pull, those fights. But those particular scenes, those two-handers in the finale, to me, like I had to rewind and go back and go, wait, this is fucking dope. Let me see that again.
Really
you know what I mean?
That,
so there was a lot of that happening.
Yeah, I mean that's that's my favorite thing to write. Right. It's just like that. There's and when you have these actors, I mean, it's just like there's no bigger high than seeing these actors kind of elevate it because you say it aloud in your head and you mumble it. But you pray. I think this works. I think this feels right. And then they're just incredible.
Well, without giving any spoilers, is there a particular scene or sequence that you can remember that just was the most challenging, that maybe you or the writers had to keep going back and rewriting just to get it right? But what was the most challenging?
Oh God,
why?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
To nail.
Endings are really hard. Yeah. I think the finale, breaking the finale, was hard. I think we.
Yeah, because there's a big reversal there. So
and I think again, just sort of certain kinds of plotting. I mean, I think it's iterative. So you take one stab on outlines, and sometimes things start out much more complicated, and you end up, a lot of what you're doing is actually there might be a simpler way to achieve this. And as far as the most difficult sequence,
where you just felt like you had to keep going over and over and over to get it right.
Yeah, I think.
And why was it maybe so challenging?
Episode 7 was a very unique challenge. Without giving a spoiler, it's
penultimate is always difficult.
Penultimate is difficult, and it's sort of. It takes place out of time with the rest of the show. It's a sort of flashback episode, and so it's kind of like its own movie, and that one with a lot of new characters. One notable new character, but several new characters. That one was one where I think the breaking of it just took many rounds, partly because it was so different. We were kind of, it was just its own thing and its own little movie, and so figuring out how to, and finding the balance of like real estate, there were some subplots that ended up getting really pared back because they were just pulling too much weight and focus from like the where you, and that's one thing you don't quite realize until you've written 3 outlines and you're like, oh wait, I think we've got in figuring all this stuff out, because you want to figure things out, you want to make them real, you want to make them plausible, and sometimes you do all that and you come up with a whole C story that is suddenly now competing with the A story, and it's like, oh wow, that actually, we don't need all that. I mean, we can pare that down tremendously. So that was one where we there were a lot of back and
blowing it up.
Yeah, no, it's, and so that one took some work, but yeah, the whole thing was really hard. I don't know. The whole thing was really hard. It was really hard. That one, I think certainly landing the plane, especially because we were still writing 7 and 8 while we had started shooting. So it's that's also a unique challenge when you're in production and on set, and then finding time to break things right.
I've been doing 2 different development rooms and going back and forth, and sometimes I'm sitting down and I'm like, wait, who are we talking about again?
Yeah, oh god, yeah.
Like, what's happening here?
No, your brain gets a little addled at a certain point, and certainly that was true. For like, I remember when we finished the last Accused script, Accused was still shooting, I thought, oh my god, I can finally just write. At least we're just writing one show. That was it was that summer was really I was not well, but
did we go on vacation after?
I took a big vacation. I went to Jamaica after we finished production of Beast.
Okay.
I did take a week off and go to Jamaica.
Just 1 week.
Just 1 week, because we were still in post, so I came back and
Right,
we're still editing. But I said, Howard can hold
You turned it
up
off for a minute.
for a minute, and I think I only did one. But I will say there is something about being forced to just go and trust yourself and not have time to second guess. There is there's some magic that happens when like the unconscious does respond to deadlines, I think.
Awesome. I want to open it up to the audience.
Sure.
People sitting in the audience out here. We got my man Rich Redlow, associate producer. Just tell me your name, who you are, Richard.
Hi, I'm Rich Redlow. I'm a writer of TV and film scripts, comedy, dramedy, dark comedy, things like that. Writer, not seller.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I told you before, I stayed up late and watched a Kid Like Jake.
Oh, thank you
And
so
it's
much.
just so nice to see a TV show that's non-conforming, if you will. Especially in this day and age. I know that's not, you didn't make it
Sure.
now, after the MAGA Nazis took over with their neo-Nazis. But Elon Musk recently said he wanted to boycott Netflix because there was a show with a trans character in it.
Yeah.
There have been beautiful shows from a few years ago, like Better Things, where one of the children turns out to be non-binary. It's handled beautifully. What do you see as the future of showing LGBTQ characters on TV or in films, and their chance to be produced and funded and all that?
It's a good question. I mean, the future can feel pretty scary right now. I mean, certainly, anytime there are, competing factors in why something gets made that are not just artistic, but political and financial, it's always scary. I mean, I certainly, one thing that was, I thought at least very encouraging on that front is, it was always, on Beast in particular, this was a story about a lesbian writer. It's not really about that fact, but that is part of who she is. And, that was never an issue for Netflix. That was never a question. I think, I would love to see more, personally, one thing that really appealed to me about this project was the fact that, yeah, it was a queer character at the center of it, but it wasn't about her sexual orientation.
Right.
And that this, the relationship between Aggie and Niall was this kind of platonic seduction that wasn't sexual. It was a relationship that I hadn't seen before. I mean, I'm always very happy when I see...
He tempted her though one time.
Believe me. I mean, come on. What narcissist doesn't think he can't turn her. I'm always happy when I see... Look, I think it's very important to have stories that are about those issues and identity, and those stories are very important. But I think progress also really... I feel like we've made progress, especially when as you said, talked about better things, when there are characters who just exist as they are, and it's not, and that doesn't have to be the theme or the message, that's just part of life, because it's in the same way we write about all kinds of people and with all kinds of jobs and all kinds of lives. Personally, I've never set out to write stories with a message in that way, or to sort of to kind of teach a lesson. But I do think you write characters that interest you, and you write them based on people you know and your own life experience. And so I think, I would hope, that regardless of, political machinations, that, that we're trending in the right direction, and the more stories, I mean, frankly, I think the more stories that where those characters do exist, the more those stories make money, ultimately, then people stop caring because they realize, audiences are into it. So,
awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
Hey, Michael Weiss. I'm a writer. I also teach writing. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I'm a huge fan of the podcast. So, I'm going to totally switch gears.
Sure. This is Hollywood.
How's that?
We got the ghetto bird out there.
That means coming.
That means quarter to one.
A couple of weeks ago, Hilliard had a guest who was talking about the speed of writing for television, and she mentioned she came up, she wrote some features, and then went to television. She was like, wow, the speed was so different. Obviously, you've been experiencing it.
Yeah.
Do you miss playwriting? Could you imagine yourself slowing down to write another play?
Yeah, I do. No, I do miss playwriting. It's been several years. I've been lucky enough to be busy, and I'm not very good. I know some writers who at least claim that, I'm on a TV show, and in my spare time, I'm writing a play just for me. And I always really want to punch them in the face. I mean, no, I admire that so much. I'm pretty myopic creative. Like, it's hard for me when I'm kind of in a groove to just on the weekends think about anything else. No, I would love to write another play, and I hope to at some point. And yeah, slowing down does feel appealing. Although it is a rush. I mean, it is like you do get. There's like something addictive about that,
That's what I mean. Could you ever go back once you've gotten this rush of speed?
I hope so. I mean, I do think, hopefully, life is long and there's, ebbs and flows but that's a really good question that I hadn't fully asked myself. I don't know how much I now rely on that or need it. Because there is something about it that, there's nothing like a gun to your head to actually force you to do it. I would say I hope so. Because I do think there's value in both.
That writer's room deadline is dangerous. Like it's like
yeah,
it forces you to
once they're building sets and they're making a schedule. I mean, you just
apply that to your playwriting. Give
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I have 3 days to
exactly.
Or else.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe there's a way to trick your brain. Yeah. Sure.
Anybody else have any questions? Introduce yourself, Minkwell.
Hi everyone, this is Minkwell Ramon, drama genre writer. My question is around The Beast Within. I haven't seen it yet, but in breaking the pilot for that show, where did you guys start to kind of set up that story?
Yeah, so Gabe had written his the first draft of the pilot, back in I think 2019 or 2020 was they sold it, and gone through many iterations. So by the time I came on board, there was already a script that then Howard and Gabe and I, in conceiving the whole arc for the series, obviously changes have to happen, and there were certain things that we kind of rebroke it and then started rewriting it. That very first episode, yeah. So Gabe and I wrote the teleplay for the version that you'll see, and Yeah, I mean, I think the bones of it were always the same. I think, obviously you're setting up these two characters. You're setting up, particularly her. She's in almost every shot of the pilot. One of the challenges was, the story is about a woman who's, she's grieving the death of her son now for 4 years. Mm-hmm. She's sort of paralyzed by this grief and very isolated. And so a lot of the pilot, there's a lot of scenes where she has no scene partner. Mm-hmm. She's just on her own, and that can be a real challenge. How do you catch an audience up to what is a very internal problem? And so even I think one of the choices we made was things like we knew that she was grieving her son. We chose to make it a day or two before the anniversary of that death.
Smart.
Because that
I
allowed.
always ask people, why today? Why did you do
Yeah,
that?
and that was just a sort of organic way to have a scene with her and her ex-wife at the cemetery. It allowed there are certain things you can just make things a little bit easier on yourself as a writer when there's a reason they would be talking about this and it doesn't feel like force-fed exposition. And then obviously the main thing about the pilot was introducing this dynamic between these two characters, which is really the sort of inciting event for it's just these two people happen to cross paths and something happens. So I think we did go back and forth on some of the we played around with the order of events and how we were going to introduce him, but ultimately I think we sort of knew where the pilot was going to end, and then getting there was where we kind of shifted things around, and it was important to establish both these two characters in a way that felt really compelling and real, and something about their interaction. So there were sort of two scenes in particular that, one, their first meeting that goes very poorly, and then this long lunch scene that's kind of, you could call it their first date, as it were. And it was, I think it was, it's a subtle premise, and it's a sort of subtle inciting incident in the sense that, like I said, it's kind of kicked off by just this kind of dance they're doing. There's something about these two people that they bring out something in each other, and that's kind of what sets off the whole series. So it was getting those right that I think was really key.
I know you guys haven't seen the show, but there was one thing that I missed, and I rewound it back and go, did I miss that? The episode where you did all the flashbacks, where we learned about Niles and Nina, let's say, for example. I missed, when did he get her back? When did he get her into his life? I must have missed it somewhere. I was like, what? Did I miss that somewhere?
Nina?
Nina, I said Nina. Yeah, Nina.
Well, we mean episode 7.
Yeah. Was there something? Because it was like they had a big...
They had
on her.
We see him.
We see them go at each other a little bit.
Yeah.
I think she stands up to him in that episode.
Yeah.
We don't see the moment when they first get together.
Right.
Yeah, that was it. I was like, when did that shift happen? How did they get together?
Oh, 6 years ago. So
yeah, okay.
No, it's true.
I mean, I bought it.
Yeah, episodes. Yeah, no, I think. I mean, to me, and again, I don't want to spoil anything. I think one thing that we knew was true about Niall was that he likes a worthy opponent. Okay. And he actually, as much as he's a powerful narcissist, he likes when women, particularly, I think, fight back a little bit. And so, to me, in my mind, what episode 7 is, Brittany Snow's character is his first wife's assistant, and so we're seeing her back when she was not his wife, but she was Madison's assistant, and
she was a powerhouse then.
And she was a powerhouse then, but she was not the immaculate, trophy wife that we've seen her as. She's scrappier in that episode. But to me, if I had to answer, there's a moment when she stands up to him in that episode, and I think if I had to, psychoanalyze him, I would say that's when he kind of really notices her for the first time.
So the exciting incident for him.
I think there's something about him seeing her in that light in episode 7 that probably led to their romance as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Did you have something?
Yeah, one follow up. Sure. So with the show being on Netflix, did you guys think specifically about ending episodes a certain way for that?
Yeah, I think yes and no. I think you always want to end an episode with a cliffhanger or a reason to tune in. I mean, obviously, the fact that Netflix drops all the episodes once, you actually can watch them all in a row, makes that perhaps even more important. But I think with episodic television, you always want a good cliffhanger. You always want to keep people leaning in at the end of an episode. You know, either because they're about to watch it now, or they gotta wait a week and you want them to. So I think
it's harder to get people to come back next week than it is to have them, because
Right.
you're in the mood, you're in the rhythm of it
Yeah.
all. You just keep
Yeah.
watching it. But if you gotta wait till next week,
Yeah.
you've lost it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always. I think the hard thing is how do you have a new kind of cliffhanger at the end of every episode? Like, because if you have the same kind of form of a cliffhanger, it can kind of get monotonous and redundant. And so I think we were always very conscious of wanting to end each episode on something powerful and a reason to keep watching, but not have it feel repetitive.
So, Claire kills people. No, I'm kidding. Awesome. Anybody else? You got something else? Jeremy? You got it.
Hi there. My name is Jerry Jerome. I'm a writer. I write features and TV for drama. My question is about the Humanitas Fellowship.
Oh yeah.
Can you give any insights on, am I speaking to the right
No, you're
person?
good.
Can you give any insights on what the process was for, what they're looking for in the writing submissions, and what did you gain from the fellowship?
Yeah, I don't know if I can. I mean, I know that. I know their mission. I can't exactly speak to what they're looking for because I wasn't, part of those decisions. I know I had a friend who had done the program and he had a very good experience, and he basically said, yeah, if you should apply this. It was, I think, 2017 or 2018. My memory is it was a while ago. My memory is I submitted. I think it was like either submit a play or a TV script. I may have given them a play, and then what was kind of unique about it was there were several rounds, and I don't know if it's the same now. They may have changed, but back when I did it, there were several rounds of kind of being a semifinalist or a finalist, and they would and you'd pitch sort of new ideas, and they would sort of deliberately say, okay, actually, we don't like that one. Come up with something else in 2 days. I was like, what is this? And I think they wanted to see you kind of be nimble and see how much you come up with in a sort of compressed time period, because that was very much what happens in television. So I think I sort of pitched them a couple ideas for like 2 or 3 series, and then picked one of those ultimately to actually write as part of the process. And so basically once, as far as the actual process, they paired, and again, I believe it's still the same, I don't know for sure, because it's been a number of years, but yeah, they paired each of us with a showrunner mentor. Mine was Ben Watkins, it was great. And I remember I met with him, and I think I actually pitched him sort of 2 of the ideas that I had, sort of come up with as part of that process. And he had a very strong feeling for which was better. And I said, great, I'll run with that. And so I just, I think I essentially I wrote an outline and then wrote a draft of that pilot with him reading and giving notes and giving feedback, and he was great. And then actually afterwards, he did believe in it. We did try to take it and sell it. We didn't, but it meant a lot that he actually with his company we tried to take it out. So yeah, it was a several month period where he kind of just chimed in with feedback, and then if I had questions about the industry, he was always there. But yeah, it was structured around sort of developing a pilot script. Was how they did it.
One final question
Sure.
on the show. When you have a script that's dialogue centric, but you have a lot of characters, how do you properly pace it out to make sure each character has enough space for an arc when you use a lot of dialogue?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't know if there's an easy answer because a lot of it's trial and error, a lot of it's sort of intuitive. I think certainly, I think sometimes giving everyone their due doesn't mean equal real estate, particularly in one episode. I think that's one thing, as an example, Brittany Snow's character has a very small, short scene in the pilot. And she's one of the, she's number 3 on the call sheet, but it's not till later in the series we give her sort of an introduction. And the pilot, is very focused on Claire's character Aggie and to a large extent Niall. But it was very much like as the episodes continued, we got more and more time away from Claire's character. More, the pilot's almost like a movie script in the sense that we're almost always with her, and that felt important to establish early on. And then as the show sort of balloons, you kind of get sort of more and more room for other characters and their arcs. And then basically, you're in the room, you're figuring out where things are going. And I would say one thing that did happen a few times is I noticed, I can think of one example where I realized, there's kind of a beat missing from this subplot. And I think it belongs somewhere in episode 4. And I think we were shooting that episode, and I was like, we gotta add a scene, because I realized that without spoilers, it's silly. I don't need to be too specific, but basically there was a progression in one in a subplot that I felt like that I kind of realized suddenly we had skipped, and so we added a short scene that actually ended up being a really great little scene. But but we didn't write that until we'd actually were writing. That was a scene in episode 4 that didn't occur to me until I was writing episode 6, or until we were writing episode 6, or breaking episode 6. And so things like that, sometimes you don't, you realize once you realize where you're going, there's actually a step missing here. And so kind of being open to that, and it just because
track it just right.
and sort of being open to the fact that, like, just because a script is done or in production doesn't, sometimes you do have to like add a little something or
This is why we need the writers on the set.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you might see something like
Yeah.
that. You know,
for sure.
At least in the same building.
Yeah. Within earshot, yeah.
Anybody else? Awesome.
Sure.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you
Thank you
hanging
so
out with
much.
us today.
Pleasure.
This is fun. This is
It's
fun.
great.
We look forward to the show dropping on Netflix, The Beast in Me, Thursday, November 13th on Netflix. So tune in. Where can people follow you at, Greg? Where you at?
I'm at, good question. What are my handles? Instagram is Gregg, Greggl Simon, Simon, and website www.greggsimon.com. I like to keep my name and everything.
I think it's smart.
That's
You
right.
got to brand yourself.
Yeah.
And what about you? Where are you at? Keep people following you?
Instagram is just, just me and my friends, but it's Daniel Pearle. And then my website is danielpearle.com.
See, Chris is mad at you now. She's like, why you ain't promoting?
I know.
Promote the
So
show.
you're doing the same thing. You're using your name.
My name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's clever.
It wasn't taken. Pearl's got the again, so.
It's got the
No, I'm promoting the show on my Instagram.
You should be making some videos and telling people to Thursday.
Yes, the trailer's up.
Yeah, the trailer's up. Awesome.
Yeah, 13th, right?
November 13th on Netflix.
12:01 a.m.
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think
Is it
it-
12 on
That's what it says.
Oh, well, then someone knows better than I do.
Yeah.
That's above my pay grade.
Stay up late that night.
Yeah.
Catch a couple.
Yeah.
By 8 a.m. you'll be,
Yeah.
you'll be ready to start the day.
Exactly.
Wait, how do we find you?
I'm gonna get there.
Oh.
And I am the host, Hilliard Guest. You guys can find me on, I say Twitter like I'm cool, by the way. On Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything, TikTok, at Hilliard Guest. We have a new Screenwriters Rant Room on Instagram. We have a new YouTube page, Screenwriters Rant Room. Follow us, like it, share, subscribe to the show, all that. Please give us a 5-star review. We need that for the metrics on iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you listen to. We support the show. Thank you guys all for sitting in with us. We appreciate you guys again. Thank you, my man. I'm about to call you Michael. Michael Weiss in the building. Stephanie, Krista, of course, Minquel, Jerry, and Rich in the building. Thank you guys all. Greg, for sitting with me.
Thank you.
This is our first time doing this.
This is so much fun.
Yeah, dude.
My first time doing any podcast.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. We still gotta do one with you.
In person. I've done one over a Zoom, but this is much more fun.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so much more fun in person. So much more fun. And thank you, of course. Thank you, Daniel. Super proud of you. Proud of the show.
Thank you so
I think
much.
it's super dope. Can't wait to work with you because we do some dope shit. For sure,
you so
man. You're
much.
dope. You're awesome.
Appreciate it.
So everybody, join at me for Game All Day. You got, go ahead, you say something.
Oh, I thought we were doing game all day.
I'm about to get
I'm
there.
excited.
I'm
I'm ready to go.
You
I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss it.
You guys know how we do it on the Rant Room. On the show, we keep it real. We keep it opinionated. We keep it what, everybody?
Game all day.
Peace, y'all. Yes, sir.
That's good.
Boom.